Costas. As we reported last night, the NBC sportscaster has created a storm of confusion. Last Sunday night, during a national football game, he delivered a commentary at halftime condemning what he calls the gun culture in America. Now, some folks got angry because they felt Costas was attacking the Second Amendment. Mr. Costas denies that, and he joins us now.
Hi, Bill.
So first up, how do you feel about the right to bear arms?
Obviously, Americans have a right to bear arms. I'm not looking to repeal the Second Amendment. I haven't immersed myself in the issue throughout my life. I'm aware of it, as many Americans are. I didn't call for any specific prohibition on guns, never used the words gun control. I quoted from a column by Jason Whitlock, who was in Kansas City for a long time, now is on the Fox Sports website, in which he mentioned, I think credibly, a gun culture in this country. Now, it plays itself out in many ways, but it's a mentality about and toward guns that almost always leads to tragedy rather than safety.
All right, and we'll get to that in a moment, but I think I want to clear this gun control thing up, because that's why I got in trouble, because some people felt...
Yeah.
And it's a very emotional issue, and I'm sure you know that. And the second thing you said is Mr. Whitlock is really, really far out there.
Well, I am not agreeing with...
I know
I even said...
But when you
associate... with whom...
When you associate yourself with a guy like who's that far out there...
I was unaware of the remarks he made about the NRA and the KKK. Okay. I'm not even sure the timeline, whether they post-dated or predated, but in any case, I was unaware of them, and obviously, I would disagree with that 100%.
Not scolding you.
I get it.
You know, okay.
I get
not
it.
Scolding.
That
just
would be
trying
a
to
mild
illuminate.
scolding compared to what I've received over the last 72 hours.
As long as you call a Christmas tree, you're okay here.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too, Bill.
There you go. So let's advance the story a little bit. Gun control in America is an emotional issue because it is clear that the Founding Fathers gave the right to bear arms for two reasons. Number one, because they felt that the government might devolve into tyranny. And the second thing was the Founding Fathers knew that they had to settle this giant country, and there weren't going to be laws out in the West, and people have guns to protect themselves from bears and Native Americans who didn't like them coming on their property. So there's a history here, all right? And most people don't even understand that history. So Americans grow up with the right to protect themselves against the government and against bad people. Then you enter into the modern age where you have a debate about, well, what's the government's responsibility here, because these are lethal weapons? And that's where you come in, all right? So you're saying that you want a more stringent program by the authorities to make it harder to get guns.
You are saying I'm saying that. Now,
you're not saying that?
If you were to ask me,
don't want to make it harder to get guns? If you were to ask
me, I believe that there should be more comprehensive and effective controls on the sale of guns.
So what does that mean?
But that is not where I was coming from.
I know, but what does that mean, though? I'm curious. How do you do that?
Roughly 40% of the guns purchased in this country do not require a background check for purchase.
Okay, so you want a background check,
You have
right?
that. You've talked about stricter penalties, harsher penalties for those
criminals.
Exactly. There's that. There ought to be training programs for those who purchase guns. I don't see any reason why someone should be able to purchase military-style artillery and body armor and automatic weapons. Only the police or the military should have that.
All of those are reasonable positions, even if you disagree.
And none of that impinges on someone's Second Amendment rights or the right to protect their home and their family.
Okay. And you know what? I agree with most of that.
Fine.
But here's where you made your mistake. You ready for your mistake, Costas?
Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
All right, you're gonna. Roll the tape.
It demonstrates itself in the Wild West, Dirty Harry mentality of people who actually believe that if a number of people were armed in the theater in Aurora, they would have been able to take down this nut job in body armor and military-style artillery, when in fact almost every policeman in the country would tell you that that would have only increased the tragedy and added to the carnage. Yes, sir.
No. Now, here's the deal.
What do you mean, no?
I'll tell you what I mean. You and I are in the theater, okay, in Colorado.
Yeah.
We're watching the Batman movie.
Yeah.
The nut comes in through the back door with his guns, and he opens fire.
And his body armor.
Body armor, whatever else he had, and he opens fire. So you and I are looking now.
And his gun that can fire off hundreds of rounds.
Right. And we're saying to ourselves, gee, I really don't want to get killed here. And you're seeing other people go down. Answer my question now. It's very simple, as you know I'm a simple man. Would you rather have the choice of ducking down on the floor or having a handgun on you to pull out and defend yourself against the man?
The hypothetical that you present
presupposes
that in most cases, someone dressed like the Joker is not going to show up with a bazooka.
Of course not.
In most cases,
but
you're going to have many armed people, all right? And Colorado happens to be a right-to-carry state.
Right.
But you're going to have many armed people who would just be sitting there watching the movie. I would suggest that if that were the case,
yes,
it's far more likely than somebody playing Dirty Harry and taking this guy down, that over the course of time there'd be a dispute about somebody stepping on someone's foot on the line
You're evading my question
and that dispute would escalate because somebody has a gun.
You're evading my question. Bob Costas and O'Reilly are in the theater.
Yeah.
Do you want to hit the floor and hope you don't get shot? Or do you want to have a gun on you that you could protect yourself with?
I don't want to have a gun on me. No, and in that situation, in the dark, in the confusion, I think it's highly more likely that there would be additional carnage. Bullets would be flying wildly all over the place.
But again, you're into the theoretical now.
As are you.
No, I'm not. You don't want a gun. I want one.
All right, fine.
Okay? I want to be able to protect myself against that loon with a gun rather than being on the floor.
And in Colorado, you would have been allowed to.
Right.
But you're taking me in a direction of a debate that I did not enter into.
No, you set the premise. I didn't set the premise. You said the gun culture and that you objected to this kind of thinking. I have this kind of thinking, and millions of people have it. I want to be able to protect myself against that guy. We just have an honest gentleman's disagreement here. That's all. You don't want it. I do want it.
What I spoke about in quoting Jason Whitlock was a mentality. There is a gun culture in this country.
Now, let's get to that.
Tony Dungy, highly respected figure, said that when he coached the Colts, some 80 players, before they cut the roster down, show up in training camp, and he asked them, how many of you own guns? About 60 of the 80 raised their hands.
Why do they have the guns?
All right, they may feel that they need it for protection.
But why? Do you know why they have them? I don't know.
They may feel that it's part of a romanticized culture. There's an aspect of this, a kind of Wild West cowboy Dirty Harry aspect. There's also an aspect.
So they're macho men and they got to have a gun.
That's influenced by some of what we see in the inner cities, or some of what may be glamorized in gangster rap videos. Whatever it may be, it plays itself out in different ways, in different demographics. So and I would suggest to you that even if one has the right to have the gun, you got this many guns out there. Far more often, bad things happen, including unintentional things, than things where the presence of a gun diminishes or averts
But I want to
danger.
get into the gun culture here. So it's cool in the NFL and in the NBA and this, for some athletes to carry a gun. Would you say that's true?
All I can tell you is since I made these comments, I have heard from players past and present, from coaches, from executives in the NFL, saying they have long been alarmed and concerned by the number of players who cavalierly believe that you have to have a gun. We now see in text messages between Javon Belcher and a friend, he's complaining that Cassandra Perkins may have had a boyfriend, and he may have had a girlfriend on the side, whatever. We haven't sorted this out yet. But he's complaining about it. And his buddy says, you better get yourself a gun. And he says, I have 8 of them. Now, the buddy didn't say, you better get a samurai sword. You better get a lead pipe like Professor Plum in the conservatory. He said, get a gun. I am not the least bit afraid to talk about the gun culture, to talk about domestic violence. I thought it was self-evident that this was a domestic violence case, self-evident, to talk about the effects that football and the culture of football have on many of the people who play it. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. I will look for places where there's more time to do it. In retrospect, I don't back up on anything I said, but I think it might have been more effective if I said, look, if we're looking for perspective on this, we're going to have a serious discussion within sports, an ongoing discussion, not 5 minutes of faux tears about it, but a serious discussion about domestic violence, about the culture of the game itself, about the easy access to guns, about steroids, drugs, and alcohol, and in the future, we will soon do that. I think that would have been more effective and would have led to less misunderstanding of where I was coming from. But I was talking about a gun culture. I never used the word Second Amendment, never used the word gun control.
And I think you were unfairly tarred there.
I cannot think of a single instance involving a professional athlete whereby that athlete having a gun averted or diminished a dangerous situation. But I can give you a long list of tragedies that came about because guys were packing.
All right. Thanks for coming in here, Costas. Good to see you, man.
Thank you, O'Reilly.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
Anytime you get in trouble, you come right here. We'll get you out of it.
I know you have security here.
Lots of it.
Yeah.